So today we're going to look at another name of God, and this name of God is Yahweh Rophe. And it's very interesting that this name is only in the Bible one time, and it's found in an awesome story in the book of Exodus. And I just want to go through the story. I'm going to start with just by reading the first verse. It's in Exodus 15:22. It says, "Then Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water." You know, the first thing we see in this story right off the bat is that some things can't be fixed on our own. See, the problem for the Israelites is they've gone 3 days, they don't have any water, and I did a little research, and this is about the time when you start to die. You need water, and you can only live about 3 days without water, so if you don't get it, you're in a crisis. You know, they're desperate, and they can't do anything about it. There's no government to call. There's no help that they can get for this lack of water that they're experiencing. And, you know, maybe in your life, you've experienced something that you can't fix on your own. This is exactly what's happening here. They're encountering something, they can't fix it on their own. I know maybe for you, it's an illness, maybe it's a relationship with your parents, or maybe it's something else. What we're going to see in this story is that when we encounter things that can't be fixed on our own, God is able to fix them. You know, the saying goes, when we're at the end of our rope, God's at the beginning of his. Well, that's definitely true here. So let's keep reading the story. Verse 23 says, "When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. Therefore it was named Marah. And the people grumbled against Moses, saying, 'What shall we drink?'" And the second thing I think we see in this story is that we easily forget the things that God has done in the past. You know, 3 days earlier, one chapter earlier, they just crossed the Red Sea. The Israelites were in Egyptian captivity for 400 years. And Moses goes to Pharaoh and he says, "Let my people go." And each time he does that, God sends a plague because he keeps saying he will and he doesn't and all this stuff. And so there's all these plagues. And then finally, God sends a big plague. And this plague is the killing of the firstborn child and the firstborn son. And Pharaoh says, "Okay, you guys can go now. I don't want any more of these plagues." But then he changes his mind, and he sent the Israelites are already on their way out, and the Egyptians start chasing them on their chariots. And what happens is they get to this water. They got another water problem 3 days earlier, and they don't know what to do. And Moses, he sticks his staff in the ground in the water, and they cross the Red Sea. But it says the people grumble against Moses. They complain. They say, "What are we going to do?" See, God knows how to handle water issues. He just parted an entire sea, and in both situations, without God's intervention, they would have died. The Egyptians don't say, "Moses, ask God to help us." They complain. Tony Evans says, God often moves us from triumph to trial to remind us that man doesn't live by bread alone. I think that's what's happening here. Have you ever experienced God do something amazing in your life or someone else's life, and then the same thing happens again, and you doubt God, and you're just complaining, and you're like, "Why is this happening?" Moses didn't forget. Look at what he does in verse 25. It says, "And he cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a log, and he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet." See, that's strange, right? When you have polluted water, I thought you needed a water filtration system. But what Moses does, God shows him a log. He picks up the log, he throws it in the water, now the water's fixed. See, that's a miracle. The water wasn't purified by their own measures. God did a miracle here and saved them. We're going to continue at the end of verse 25 into verse 27. It says, "There the Lord made for them a statute and a rule, and there he tested them, saying, 'If you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God, and do that which is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord your healer.' Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the water." He says, "I am the Lord your healer." He saved their lives by fixing the water issue. They were going to die. Remember, 3 days without water is about how long you can last. But then God comes through, he fixes the water issue, and then they are able to live. You know, I think the Israelites may have been wondering, you know, it's great that God got us out of Egypt, but look at all those bad things he did to them. I wonder what he could do to us. The answer is God isn't going to do the same thing to them because he says he's the Lord, their healer. God's telling them that they were exempt from the plagues only because he was their healer. He tells them to listen to his voice, and he won't put any of the illnesses on them that he put on the Egyptians. So today, God is our healer. But in the Old Testament, he told them that it was contingent on them following him. This isn't a promise that they will never get sick, but it's a promise that if they do get sick, they can come to him for their help. He's telling us to turn to him when we're afflicted. He says that what he's saying is that obedience brings a blessing, and disobedience brings punishment. And that's kind of scary. But that's the situation that they're in the Old Testament. Because we know how that goes. So often we fail, we blow it. But here's the good news. In Isaiah 53, 5-6, it says this: "But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed." It's talking about Jesus. It says, "All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all." And when Isaiah says, "By his wounds we are healed," he's referring to forgiveness of sin, which is not only a burden, it's like an illness that only God can cure. But the good news is that even when we mess up, Jesus came and rescued us from the penalty for our sins. He healed us from that. So what do we do with this? How do we apply the name Lord your healer to our lives today? I think we just simply trust him. When we encounter things that we struggle with, we trust him. So next time you're going through a hard time and you don't know what you're going to do, it's like there's no human answer to the question. Well, you got to go to God, because with God there always is an answer. God is the Lord our healer. So we have a testimony that we're going to listen to of someone experiencing the Lord their healer in their life. And let's listen to it now. And then when it's over, we're going to talk about it some more in our small groups with some questions that we have for you.
Hi, Generation Hope. It's Miss Chris here again. And I wanted to share with you a time in my life where God revealed himself and showed himself to be Lord my healer. It was back a few years ago, and my jaw muscles went into such spasm that I couldn't move my jaw. I couldn't open it. I couldn't talk. I couldn't eat. It was very painful. And as a result of not eating, obviously I lost energy, I lost weight, and I didn't know what to do. And people, some of them were just so sympathetic, and then other people, you could just see in their eyes, oh, I am so glad I don't have your problems. So around that same time, my body decided it wouldn't process dairy, so I couldn't have anything with milk or with cheese or ice cream or butter. And so what that means is that these meal replacement shakes that you can buy, they all have dairy in them. So what would I eat? That's when I discovered blender meals. Now let me tell you a secret. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes together in a blender, really gross. Beef stew in a blender, pretty gross. Chicken pot pie in a blender, that was workable. So I did that, and I called my adopted mom from the church I went to in college, because she had this problem too. See, that this joint here, doctors call it your TMJ, and she had problems with that too, very long term. They had done many things, from orthodontics to braces to electrodes all over her head, to try to help her, and there was definitely progress, but it was slow and it was hard. So it felt like God was silent. And I went to the doctors, and they gave me medications, and they gave me very, very strong muscle relaxants that would totally knock me out. They're supposed to release the jaw muscles from the spasms, but it didn't happen. So sometimes God will heal through medicine, but sometimes he doesn't. And just like we heard CJ talk about for the Israelites, God healed me in a way that was totally unexpected. He healed it through my flute playing. And I hadn't played for many years, but at that point, our church had started a worship orchestra, and we were going to do a musical production, kind of like Bethany. And so I started playing, and I told my dentist, and he said, I'm not sure if you should do that, but bring in your flute, and I will see. And so I brought in my flute, and I got out this piece right here. It's just the mouthpiece, and I would play for him. And as I played, he felt my jaw on both sides. He said, that is the perfect relaxed position for your jaw. You can play as much as you want. And so I did. I played the musical music. I played music from the church hymnal. I bought some music that I would play. And as I played, I looked at the words and I sang them. And that's where God met me, that through that flute playing. The more I played, the more my jaw muscles relaxed. So, isn't that cool? Who would guess it? God didn't use medicine, but he used something totally unrelated and totally surprising. Isn't that just like God? So I got to experience God as my healer through that. And so now when I play my flute, I worship God. I remember, God, you have healed me. And so I can thank him as I play my flute.